All right, so now that we have a piece of bark harvested off of a pine, and this has been soaking in water, it's fairly easy to harvest it off white pine this time of year. Just get a young sapling that's growing nice and straight, and you can see right here's where the first branches were coming out. You got a nice long section here that doesn't have any knots in it whatsoever. You can peel that right off, and this stuff is kind of like nature's Kydex in a way. It just works really, really well. And depending on the region that you're in, you're going to have different things that are going to work better for you. And we don't have a lot of that nice birch to make birch bark containers and things like that here in the eastern woodlands where I live, but we do have plenty of white pine. So what we've done is we've taken a pattern that we've cut out of a piece of cardboard. We're going to lay that pattern on here, and we're going to cut that pattern out first to kind of get what we want to get us started here. So I'm just going to lay it on here, and I'm going to take a really sharp knife. I'm going to use my Camp Companion here because it's about the closest thing I've got to an X-Acto knife, and I'm going to cut this pattern out of the bark here. Now that's going to be step one, is to get us a pattern. And your pattern doesn't have to be exactly perfect. You can mess with it after the fact. I'll show you that in a minute, how we're going to match things up to make sure that all of our sides are the same before we start. All right. Now we have our initial pattern, and now we can kind of fold this thing and look and see if these patterns match up. And if they don't, we can trim things to match. So just kind of lay it over on itself here, and just kind of cut the areas off that don't match to get them matched up good. If you got a piece that's peeled off like that, just make it match up. You can see we've got one side here, it looks like it's a little taller than the other. We're going to want to fix that. We'll do that here in just a second. And we've got one flap that's a little bigger here. Now we'll flip this thing over and match these sides up and match our flaps, and you'll see we've got some trimming to do here to get this right. That one's not too bad. This one's a little bit off right here. Let's get this a little bit closer to where we need to be here. All right, it's not going to take a whole lot of material to do this stuff. We need a sail needle, and we need some number 12 bank line. We'll go ahead and cut ourselves 6 or 8 feet of this off to start. Now this is kind of sticky. You're working with pine, so it's going to get, your hands are going to get a little sticky from the sap, but it's not any big deal that you can't get off fairly easily. Go ahead and thread the eye of your needle. You just need a needle big enough, a sail needle large enough to get number 12 bank line through. Now, I would take the other end of this cordage and I would tie a double overhand stop knot in that cordage. So that's just basically going through the knot twice to get yourself a pretty good ball on the end of that thing as a stop knot. You're not going to yank any of this any too tight because you don't want to rip the bark. But the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to fold this up, and you're going to want to sew the sides together first. And you want plenty of overlap there to hold the threads good. So I'd give myself a good 1/2 inch of overlap there. And I would start at the top and work my way to the bottom. And I would start on the inside and work my way out. So I would figure out give yourself about 1/4 inch of room in there for your threads. Go through, and you're going to go through each one of these twice. So then we're going to come around to the outside. We're going to line everything up, make sure we're exactly where we want to be. These first stitches are the ones that really count. Give yourself plenty of room there when you're going through them for overlap, okay? Pull that together and then go through again where you started. The same hole. So you've got a double wrapping of threads through that hole. And now we have 2 wraps of threads through this hole. And then we're going to drop down diagonally, keeping everything overlapped. And we're going to go down about a 1/2 inch and come straight out again, just like that. Okay? And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to come through that twice. So we're going to go straight across from that and go in. And then go right back through those holes a second time. All right, so when you get that first row of stitching done, it's going to look like this. There's about a 1/2 inch of space between each one. Double every time through. Backside basically is just a zigzag pattern going down. All right? Now, as it starts to dry, I would wet it. Stick it back, let it soak for 5 minutes. Go to the next area that you're going to sew. Okay, so I just pulled that through here on the outside, pushed the stop knot down on there and cut my cord, and now this is going to fold over top of this. A pair of craft shears like this comes in really handy to make sure this is fairly symmetrical before you sew it down. Now we're going to let it soak, and then we're going to get this sewn on. All right, so once you get that flap sewn down all the way around, and that's just a running stitch, in, out, in, out, in, out, then we're going to go and do the other side exactly the same way. Okay, once you've got both your sides sewn down, and you want to make sure it's kind of sitting nice and level there. It's going to have a little roll to it both ways because you got a round bottom right now. All right? So it's going to roll both ways a little bit on you, but it's nice and square. The top's nice and square, that's what counts. So now we're going to put a rim around this thing. So we're going to cut another piece of bark about this wide, long enough to go all the way around this thing, and then we're going to whip stitch that on to finish this basket. Now we've got to use 2 pieces of bark here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other piece of bark and I'm going to trim it a little bit like this so that I can slide it up inside this one and loosen these stitches up just a little bit, just like this. Loosen these first 3 stitches up and run this piece of bark right in between them just like this to connect the 2, and then I'm going to come back in and tighten them back up down on top of it. You can even things up as you go. Get your spacing fairly even there. And just continue that stitch all the way around till you get to the other overlap. Now we're getting to the point where we're back around to this side again. And we're going to have to tack this down all the way around, and we're going to get this tucked in. So let's kind of bring this around and figure out about where we need to cut this off at. And I'm going to say right in here is going to be pretty good. Now, this bad boy's going to want to go right underneath that corner there, it looks like. Just happened to work out that way. That's okay, because the next one's going to catch him. Just like that. Loosen that up just a little bit. All right, come around this next time. We'll have a lock on that dude. It won't go anywhere. All right, it's not too shabby. Now we could go back across here in a diamond if we wanted to, or we can just tie that off and leave it right where it's at. But now we got to think about, do we want a strap on this thing? Do we just want it to be a flat basket? What exactly do we want out of this thing? And let it dry and form the way we want it, and we're in good shape. All right, listen, guys, I know that folk skills and skills videos in general are not the most entertaining, but I thought it was important to get this pine bark basket video out there for you because it is a good medium for making containers. It's one of the things that we use at Bushcraft 101 for the container making phase of that training. Sometimes we do shrink pots, sometimes we do bark baskets, sometimes we do coil baskets, but we make some type of container in that class. And this time of year, when the bark's peeling well and it's becoming spring, is a great time to harvest white pine bark for projects like this. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.